Hello students, dear students, good morning. Welcome back to our air lecture 5. In today's topic, before we start lecture number 5 and today's topic, I first just want to give you an idea what we are going to cover in our lecture number 5. Lecture number 5 may be in 2 or 3 parts because in lecture number 5 we are going to discuss types of chemical reaction. As you all know, in our previous 4 lectures in chapter number 1, that is chemical reaction and equation, we have discussed, if you have noted down in your book, we have discussed about understanding chemical reaction, some chemical reaction taking place in daily life. Then I have given you idea about how to write word equation. Then I also gave you an idea how to translate a given word equation into skeletal equation by utilizing symbols and formulas. Then I also gave you an idea regarding how to balance any chemical equation. If you can remember, my dear student, and if you are revising properly at home, I have taught you one very effective and helpful method for balancing a chemical equation, that was heat and trial method, and you all know the utilization of that method. And we also gave last 2 lectures, lecture number 3 and 4, just only for practice of balancing chemical equation. Our today's topic is types of chemical reaction. In this almost, if you consider, half chapter is almost over. And now the next part which we are discussing, that is lecture number 5. In that we are going to discuss various types of chemical reaction. If I just want to give you an idea, so we are going to discuss in under the title types of chemical reaction, we are going to discuss combination reaction, we are going to discuss decomposition reaction, displacement reaction, redox reaction, etc. Okay? So my dear student, before we start our lecture today, in understanding types of chemical reaction, as per my advice, take your book, sit with pen, be alert, and attend the lecture like you are sitting in classroom. Okay, so today we are starting topic 1.2 from your textbook, that is types of chemical reaction, and in that topic we are starting topic, this is our lecture number 5, and we are starting topic 1.2 from your textbook, that is types of, this is our topic today, types of chemical reaction which we are targeting today. This is our topic for today, types of chemical reactions. Under this title, we are going to study today topic 1.2.1, and that topic is combination reaction. This is what we are going to study today, and we are going to understand it. Combination reaction. This is our out of the 4 types of chemical reaction given in a textbook. This is the first one we are going to discuss. Combination reaction. First, before I start, let me clarify the meaning of combination reaction. What is the meaning of combination reaction? Name itself doesn't imply some meaning of chemical reaction. Combination means what? If you just understand by your common sense, combination means to combine. Whenever during any chemical reaction two substances combine, means two substances chemically react with each other and they form a new substance, that is known as combination reaction. Understood? To make definition of combination reaction more and more clear, let me write one chemical equation here which we have already discussed in our previous lectures. So I will now onwards, whatever chemical reaction I write here, they all will be definitely balanced chemical reaction. એ બધા balanced chemical reaction હશે. Just let me write one equation here. 2Mg magnesium ribbon. If you can remember, we discussed it in our previous lecture. When magnesium combines with oxygen in gaseous form, as you know, we have studied it, if you can remember, when magnesium ribbon burns, it burns with dazzling flame, reacts with atmospheric oxygen and forms magnesium oxide. So what happened here? Here you can understand quite clearly two elements chemically reacted with each other, magnesium and oxygen. Two elements chemically reacted with each other and formed a new compound, magnesium oxide. So this is combination reaction, because here two elements combine and form one compound. Understood? So we can call it combination reaction. To mention one another one, let me write some simple equations which you have already studied in our previous lectures, or you have also studied it in previous standard also. Carbon, when react with oxygen, as you know, my dear student, whenever carbon burns, it combines with atmospheric oxygen and forms carbon dioxide, CO2. This is also combination reaction, because here two elements combines with each other and forms a new compound. So this is also one particular example of combination reaction. We can also mention some other example, just as you know very well. When hydrogen gas chemically react with oxygen in proportion, you all know. You should also remember, my dear student, whenever hydrogen reacts with oxygen, doesn't mean that it always form water. It also form hydrogen peroxide also. Just to note down the hydrogen peroxide formula, I am writing here H2O2. But here you have studied in 9th standard the law of constant proportion. If you can remember, whenever hydrogen and oxygen combine in fixed weight proportion of 2 is to 1, they form water. Understood? Let me write here and complete the equation 2H2O gas. This is also one type of combination reaction. In all three chemical reaction I have written here, this illustrates the definition of combination reaction. When two elements chemically react with each other, they form a new compound. That's why all these chemical equation I have written here are coming under combination reaction. In exam, if you are asked in 2 or 3 marks, define combination reaction, so here I have written 3 chemical reactions already. Now, my dear student, let me write one more equation for making the meaning quite clear. Calcium oxide, CaO, when added to water, means when calcium oxide, speaking in simple way, when calcium oxide reacts with water, it forms calcium hydroxide, that is aqueous solution. Is this also a combination reaction? Definitely, because here calcium oxide react with water and forms calcium hydroxide. Here two compounds, one is calcium oxide, one is water. They chemically react with each other and formed calcium hydroxide. So this is also one of the example of combination reaction. Now, all 4 equation I have written here, you must have noted down in your book, and let us try to summarize all 4 reaction in form of definition. So when I speak, you have to concentrate and you have to note down the definition of combination reaction. Initially I spoke when two substances chemically react with each other and forms a new substance, that is called combination reaction. Here, if you summarize the 4 equations, in first 3, two elements chemically react with each other, last 2 compounds chemically react with each other. So how can you define, when I speak the definition of combination reaction, my dear student, you should write with me. I am speaking. If you are asked in exam, define combination reaction, understand how will you define? It can be defined in this way. It goes like when two elements or two compounds chemically react with each other and forms a new compound. When two elements or two compounds chemically react with each other and forms a new compound, that is known as combination reaction. Okay, my dear students, so meaning of combination reaction has been, I think, clear in your mind. Okay, at the end of the lecture, definitely I will dictate you the homework questions for practice, but here also I am speaking your question number 1 for homework. Define combination reaction and give some examples. So I have already written here 4 examples. You can utilize any 2, any 3, all equation also if you can remember properly balanced chemical equation you can write in exam. Understand? Okay, let us move ahead. Under the same title of combination reaction, we want to discuss one another topic also here. Just try to understand it. Few reaction which we have written just now. If I repeat one equation here, CaO, that is solid, which you dissolve in water, it forms CaOH2 aqueous. If you just try to understand the topic which I want to discuss under the same category of combination reaction, CaO plus H2O, CaOH2. Why I have written this equation again here? Because if I write here, I add one another product here, heat. Do you agree? You must have seen practically. Let me elaborate this more clearly. Calcium oxide, which you all know, calcium oxide is also known as quicklime. To make it more clear, we sometimes call it lime powder. Lime powder એટલે ચૂનો. You must have seen whenever new buildings are constructed, as you know, or even when you make your new building, new home, so after plastering the wall, always we whitewash it. At the time of whitewashing, what you are doing? You are taking lime powder, mixing it with water. When lime powder mixes with water, it forms no doubt aqueous solution of calcium hydroxide, but at the same time, if you have practically experienced it sometime, if you have seen, કંઈ આપને દેખાઓ કે એક બેરલ હોય, એમાં water is taken and એમાં lime powder is added, and if you stir the mixture, so after some time you will see bubbles coming out. that bubbles coming out suggest the production of heat energy during this chemical reaction. That means what? I have written heat here as a product. So if I have written heat as a product here, it is definitely a combination reaction. But if I add some more thing, is it an exothermic reaction or not? Yes, definitely. This is an exothermic reaction. Why exothermic reaction? Because during this particular chemical reaction, there are two products. One is definitely calcium hydroxide, but one another product is heat here. So how will you define and why it is called exothermic chemical reaction? Because here in this particular chemical reaction, heat energy appears as a product. So let me define this for you before I speak the definition. What can be the question for this? Define exothermic reaction and explain it. Means explain it by some proper examples. So it's quite simple. If during any chemical reaction heat energy is produced, again, because you might be noting down, if during any chemical reaction heat energy is produced, then we can call it exothermic reaction. Understood? So my dear student, if in exam you are asked define exothermic reaction and at the same time you are asked write at least one chemical equation in support, so you can mention this: CaO plus HCOS H2O gives COH2 plus heat. You can mention this chemical reaction quite easily. Understand? Are there some other example also which you can also mention in support of exothermic reaction? One equation we have just now written and I am just repeating it: C plus O2. You all remember this. C plus O2, carbon plus oxygen gave carbon dioxide. In this reaction also heat energy appears as a product. So you can also mention in exam this as also one of the equation in support of exothermic chemical reaction. Understand? So two equation I have already written here, which both you can mention as an example in exothermic reaction. Are there some other example which you can also write under the category of exothermic reaction? Definition you have already written, that if during a chemical reaction heat energy is produced, that is known as combination reaction. Two example I have already written just now. Let us take another example for understanding exothermic reaction. Just take an example. Suppose I write CH4 gas. This is the formula of what? You remember, this is the formula of methane. And no doubt we are not going to discuss just now the sources of methane, but you all know that methane is one of the major constituent in natural gas. Natural gas में methane appears as one of the main constituent. So when you speak like burning of natural gas is an exothermic reaction, when you speak that burning of natural gas is an exothermic reaction, at the same time when you say that natural gas burn means methane burns, there are no doubt some other constituent gases might be present in natural gas, but methane is one of the main product in natural gas. So when you say burning of natural gas, I simply say burning of methane. When methane burns, it combines with oxygen. And which are the product here? When methane reacts with oxygen, these are the products: CO2 plus H2O plus heat. Let us just try to balance this chemical equation. 4 hydrogen, let me put 2 here. Equation is quite balanced now. You can verify it, understand. 1 carbon, 4 hydrogen, 2 oxygen here. Yes, there are 4 oxygen, so let us write 2 here. It is balanced chemical equation. Can you write in exam this has also a exothermic reaction? Definitely, because during this chemical reaction also heat energy appears as a product, and whenever heat energy appears as a product, we can say it exothermic chemical reaction. So my dear student, I have mentioned 3 chemical equation in support. Understand, for exothermic reaction, 2, one of that of calcium oxide and water give calcium hydroxide plus heat. Second, carbon C plus O2 gives CO2 plus heat. That was also one equation. This is the third one. Methane, when burns, it combines with oxygen and the products are CO2, H2O and heat. So this is also an example of exothermic chemical reaction. Understood? So in support of exothermic chemical reaction, you can mention all 3 examples. Understood? Now, let us move ahead and let us extend the topic this way. Suppose, my dear student, just concentrate here. Suppose in exam you are asked such question. Suppose, explain. Suppose you are asked in exam such type of question, explain respiration. Respiration is an exothermic reaction. मानी लो कि suppose in exam you are asked such type of question. This may also be asked in our test in WRT. Explain respiration is an exothermic reaction. Let us try to understand it. How can we understand it? That respiration is an exothermic reaction. If you are asked in exam in 2 to 3 marks, So my dear student, at least if asked in 2 or 3 marks, you need to give some proper explanation. Understand? To prove that respiration is an exothermic reaction. Let us try to understand it and prove it. Any student who has idea what happens in respiration reaction is able to answer this question in a correct manner. જેને એ આઈડિયા હોય what happens in respiration, that student can easily explain this particular question. Let me ask my dear student, you must have noted down this question. You must have written, explain respiration is an exothermic reaction. We may ask in 2 to 3 marks in WRT. So let me try to explain. How can we understand? First, the basics. What happens in respiration? सबसे पहले आपको ये क्लियर होना बहुत जरूरी है कि रेस्पिरेशन में होता क्या है. What happens in respiration, my dear student? Glucose molecule are oxidized during the process of respiration. Glucose molecules are oxidized in living cell and produces necessary essential energy which help every living organism to stay alive and to perform various life processes. So my dear student, that is clear, atlo clear કે during respiration what happens? Glucose molecule are oxidized in living cell and produces the energy which is necessary and required for every living organism, be it unicellular or multicellular, to stay alive as well to perform the daily life process. Understand? So glucose molecule is oxidized during respiration. That is clear. How this glucose molecule is formed? First, so you should be very clear about one thing. We are eating so many compounds. Our daily food, our daily intake of food consists of mainly which nutrients? To just list it out: carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, minerals, etc. Lipid. In that, carbohydrates are one of the major energy supplier in our body. So when you eat food, that food decomposed. Understand, whatever carbohydrates are present in the food are decomposed and converted into glucose molecule. This glucose molecule reach to each and every cell of our body. There, this glucose molecule are oxidized, and after this glucose molecule are oxidized, they produce 3 products: carbon dioxide, water vapor, and heat energy. And that heat energy helps you to survive and perform all life processes. So my dear student, is it clear what happens in respiration? આ તો clear છે. Now let me write. Suppose first, to explain this, again my important point, you should be well aware regarding all correct formulas and symbol. That must be very clear. Glucose, just take an example. formula basic. C6. You can remember the formula of glucose, my dear student. You are sitting in front of me. You must be just trying to just find out the formula from your mind. So thinking kara, and try to memorize the formula which you have already studied in previous standard also. If you can, I'm just writing it here. Glucose C6 H12O6. These glucose molecules are, when oxidized in our cell, these glucose molecules are, when oxidized in our cell, which are the ultimate product: carbon dioxide, H2O, and heat. And this heat energy supplies efficient amount of energy to perform our daily life activity. That means the daily life process already. So my dear student, what you can see here, there are three products: carbon dioxide, water, and heat. Because heat energy appears here as a product, that's why you can also call it a exothermic reaction. Suppose I have asked, no doubt it is given in your material also, textbook માં પણ છે. Suppose you are asked in exam in 2 to 3 marks, પૂછે કે explain glucose or explain respiration is an exothermic reaction. How will you start? First, what you will say? First, you will write first statement: respiration is an exothermic reaction. Second one, during respiration reaction, glucose molecule are oxidized in living cell and it produces carbon dioxide, water vapor, and heat energy. Then you will write the same equation and balance it. That's necessary, my student. You have already done it. 6, 6. Now it's a balanced chemical equation. And 6 મૂકી દો. Understood? It's balanced. Now, what you will write? 2 sentences I spoke. You must have already written, my dear student. Now the next sentence. Fourth one. After you write this chemical equation, what you will write the next sentence? During above chemical reaction, we can observe that glucose molecule is oxidized and it formed carbon dioxide, water vapor, and heat energy. Because during this chemical reaction, heat energy appears as a product. That's why the above given reaction is definitely an exothermic reaction. And then at last you write, therefore, from the above explanation, we can understand that respiration is also an exothermic reaction. Okay, my dear student, one another example I am not writing here, but I am just mentioning for you. Understand? You can also please write down in your book. This is an exothermic reaction. One another example: decomposition of vegetable matter is also one of the exothermic reaction. Vegetable matter બધું એનું decomposition is also one of the exothermic reaction, because by decomposition of vegetable matter, understand, heat energy is produced. So this is also an example of exothermic reaction. Okay, so my dear student, as far as exothermic reaction is concerned, I have discussed with you at least 5 examples. One of calcium oxide, one of carbon dioxide formation, then one of natural gas burning, then respiration and exothermic reaction, and then decomposition of vegetable matter, organic matter is also one type of exothermic reaction. Okay, my dear student, I suppose by this time at least your mind must be clear in exothermic reaction. Okay, now let us try to understand endothermic reaction. It is exactly opposite to exothermic reaction. What happens in exothermic reaction? Heat energy is produced. What happens in endothermic reaction? Heat energy is absorbed. So how can you define? If during a chemical reaction heat energy is absorbed, then you can say it endothermic reaction. It is exactly opposite to exothermic reaction. Here heat energy is absorbed. Understood? Right? You must have noted down the definition. What is the definition? If during a chemical reaction heat energy is absorbed, then it is known as endothermic chemical reaction. I am just giving you 1 minute to just think. Can you remember any example, any daily life experience to mention in support of endothermic chemical reaction during which heat energy is produced? And this is such type of reaction where heat energy is absorbed. Understand? To mention, suppose I am just writing one chemical equation here. Understood? For you, and I am giving you at least 1 minute time. Understand? You just try. Please try to balance and write the product during this chemical equation. I am writing here barium hydroxide plus ammonium chloride My dear student, 1 minute's time for thinking. I have just written a word equation that is also incomplete. I have just written only name of two compound, barium hydroxide and ammonium chloride, and you just try. I am giving you 1 minute's time. Try to write the product, then try to write the skeletal equation and try to balance it. Try, my dear student, if you can. Okay? Continue. Okay, dear students, given you enough time, barium hydroxide, ammonium chloride. Let me write for you the products. Yes, why not? It forms ammonium hydroxide. It forms ammonium hydroxide plus barium chloride. Okay, these are the product. Some students must have written it, and those who are able to write the product during this chemical reaction, understand that means it's a good effort. Barium hydroxide plus ammonium chloride react with each other and form ammonium hydroxide and barium chloride. Let us try to write or convert it into skeletal equation. Okay, what should I write? Barium hydroxide, I write BaOH twice try to understand, my dear student, and make the formula quite clear. Barium hydroxide plus ammonium chloride. Can you write the correct formula? NH4Cl. Barium hydroxide plus ammonium chloride, both are liquids. When they react with each other, what they form? Ammonium hydroxide, NH4OH, and plus barium chloride, BaCl2. Understand, just to balance 2 chlorine atom, try to balance 2 and write 2 here. It is already a balanced chemical equation already. It is also given in textbook in the form of activity that in one vessel or one test tube you take barium hydroxide and you add ammonium chloride in and stir the mixture. What happens? They have instructed in textbook, try to touch the bottom of the test tube or whatever vessel you take, and what you feel? You feel cool. Why you feel cool? Because during this chemical reaction, formation of ammonium hydroxide and barium chloride does take place, but here heat energy is absorbed, and because the heat energy is absorbed, you feel it. So this is one example of endothermic chemical reaction. Understood? So if in exam you are asked, define endothermic chemical reaction and explain, how will you define? You must have written, again I speak and you write. If during any chemical reaction, if during any chemical reaction heat energy is absorbed, then it is known as endothermic reaction, and in that you mention this. When barium hydroxide and ammonium chloride are mixed in a vessel and stirred, so within some period of time you feel cooler. Products are ammonium hydroxide and barium chloride, but during this chemical reaction heat energy is absorbed. That's why it is known as endothermic chemical reaction. Okay, so this is endothermic reaction, and I think we have discussed enough about combination reaction already. Enough about combination reaction. Understand? So my dear student, in today's lecture, as our target was to give you an idea regarding types of chemical reaction, in which we are going to discuss 4 types of chemical reaction, but today our target, and we discussed one type of chemical reaction, that is combination reaction. We discussed quite in detail, and I hope you haven't forgotten my suggestion and my advice. You must have seated before my lecture started with book, and you must have noted down each and every important point I spoke out during my lecture. Understood? So, my dear student, before I end this lecture, please note down homework for today's lecture. Just mention in your book homework for today's lecture. I am speaking one by one, and I am giving you enough time so that you can note down. Okay? So my dear student, ready? Your first question. First one. Define combination reaction and give 4 equations in support. Should I speak again? Define combination reaction, write 4 equations in support. Your second question may be like this. what are or what is exothermic reaction? Give some illustrations. What is exothermic reaction? Give some examples, illustrations. Your third question. What is endothermic reaction? Explain with the help of chemical reaction which we discussed just now, or explain. Okay. Third one. Now fourth one. Prove that or explain respiration is an exothermic reaction. Again I speak. Explain respiration is an exothermic reaction. Fifth one. Explain burning of natural gas is an exothermic reaction. That was next question. And at last again one question. Differentiate between exothermic reaction and endothermic reaction. At least 2 points in support. One definition and one chemical equation you have to write. So 5 questions for today's homework. My dear student, understand them, read them, revise them, and prepare them thoroughly, and be sincere and complete your homework. Understood? Thank you very much from Bharat sir. Okay.